All right. Now, reading music requires that you're able to do three things, and three things only, really, to let you read music. Now, things like expression and vibrato and those kind of things, and dynamics, those kind of things are in addition to being able to read music, but not essential for reading music. The first thing you have to know how to do and know what to do is to know what note you're playing or you're trying to play. And to know that, you have to understand a couple of things. Clef signs, and for most of us, there are two. There is a treble clef, treble, T-R-E-B-L-E, and bass clef. This is the worst bass clef ever. There you go, bass clef. Those two clefs. This clef, the clefs tell us what the names of the lines and spaces are called. They tell us what the names and the lines and spaces are called. This clef, the treble clef, this is the bass clef, not the bass clef, it's the bass clef. It's called the G clef, and because of the curlicue right here, the second line from the bottom, we call this line G. On the bass clef, we call the bass clef the F clef, because in between the dots, we call this line F. G clef, F clef. And then the notes go alphabetically through to the musical alphabet. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on forever in both directions. So if this is G, and it is, the next space is A, and the next line is B, the next space is C, and so forth and so on. Here we have F, so the next space is G, the next line is A, the space above the line is B, and so on and so forth. So once you know what the names of the lines and spaces are, so the note that's on the line or the space, once you know what they're called, you are a third of the way from being done, from being able to read music. Now, the second part of learning how to read music is, again, first of all, knowing what the name of the note is. We talked about treble clef. Let's see, there's a treble clef right there. And that second line there, that goes through you can see, goes through the curlicue of the treble clef is G. So we know what it's called. Now the second part is knowing how to reproduce that note on our instrument. What fingerings we need. What we're looking at is a flute fingering chart. We could have had trumpet or saxophone or baritone or whatever, but this is how one reproduces that note. You can see the colored in note, the colored in holes, circles. Those are keys that are depressed, not sad, but pushed down. That would produce that note right there. So now you have to know what the note is called, how to finger it, and then we're off and rolling. We are 2/3 of the way of being able to read music. We know that this note is called G, and this is how we produce a G on the flute. Okay, now that we know the first two things, what the note's called, how to produce that note or reproduce that note on our instrument, the third thing is knowing how long to play that note for how many counts or whatever. Okay? Now, in order to know that, we should be familiar with something called a time signature. This is a time signature that is 4/4. And it's not a fraction, so don't try to reduce it and make it 1, right? So 4/4 just means that there are 4 counts per measure, and this code tells us that a quarter note, one of these notes, gets 1 count. 4 counts in a measure, and a quarter note, one of these gets 1 count. Let's see, I'll move that over a little bit. Gets 1 count. That's what that means. And that's all it means. So, if we are looking at some music and we see this note and this time signature, TIME signature, and we see this note, what we know is that we play this note for 1 count. Okay? 1 count. Why? Because it says so here. The 4 tells us to play this note for 1 count. Now, the cool thing is, well, how do you know how to play the other notes? There is a double and a half relationship between notes. Isn't that cool? Here is the double relationship. We know that this is a 1 count, that this equals 1 count in 4/4 time. If we double it, we get a half note. If we double it, we get a whole note. One count, 2 counts, 4 counts. We need to know what the note is called, how to finger it, and how long to play it. Easy enough? And that's the double. We also have a half relationship. If we have our quarter note again, that in 4/4 time gets 1 count. If we chop our quarter note in half, we'll get 2 eighth notes. Each of our eighth notes gets 1/2 of a count. If we chop our eighth note in half, we'll get 2 16th notes. Those are some of the worst drawn 16th notes in the history of man. And they'll get 1/4 count, 1/4 count apiece. 1/4 or 1/4 apiece. If I double the 16th note, I get an eighth note. If I double the eighth note, I get a quarter note. If I double the quarter note, I get a half note. If I double the half note, I get a whole note. It's arithmetic, which is one of the reasons they say music is just like math. It is not like math. It's more like a language. There you go. Now, I want to produce a PDF for you to download to help you with this. I know that you've come here to learn saxophone, but I want to give you more than that. If you're not just a saxophone player, you're somebody who wants to learn music, no matter what age you're at. If you just started in middle school and you want to get this stuff because you don't really understand it, and we want to talk about rhythms and that kind of stuff, hang on. subscribe, let your friends know that we're doing this over here. Right now we're at 801 subscribers. I'd love to get to 1,000. That's our next goal. So again, my name is Willie Lawson. This is the Saxophone Factory. Until we see you again, keep playing.